Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I am pleased to welcome back Lee Harris from Blue Marine Travel for our weekly travel update. How are you, Lee?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you very much, Ria.
So things are slowly moving around the world, and some places are going a bit backwards, and some places are moving forwards. What's going on?
Yeah, so some good news. We'll start with the good news anyway. So for Nepalese crew, who I know there are a growing number of Nepalese crew who have been stuck on board their respective yachts long beyond their contract dates. The Nepalese government this week have announced they'll be reopening their airspace for international commercial flights to and from the country as from the 17th of August. I did reach out to one of the main airline carriers who operates flights into and out of Kathmandu. And they've advised me that they're going to be recommencing their services as from the 18th, so a day later. I think that's more precaution to make sure that everything's up and running as it should be. So yeah, some good news definitely for the Nepalese crew.
And one thing that really is top of mind right now is South African crew. I mean, we've heard a few stories this past week of different crew being affected in different ways. What is going on with South Africa at the moment?
Yeah, so it's still the same. No commercial flights are operating. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be an end in sight with regards to the lockdown that they've got in place on their airspace. There are a number of repatriation flights that seem to be working and working quite well compared to how they were, a month or 2 months ago, where quite a few were getting cancelled. The KLM ones that we discussed last week, they seem to be having one or two every week or every 2 weeks, which are taking off with no issues whatsoever. There's been a few other ones announced this week. I'll give you one or two of them. There are quite a few. Swiss have announced some flights inbound. Also, Air France have announced some. KLM have got more on, and Lufthansa had also announced some as well. With regards to flights outbound crew, again, there's quite a few. Turkish Airlines have also announced repatriation flights departing from Johannesburg. KLM again have flights from Johannesburg and Cape Town on the 8th and 9th of August respectively. And Emirates also due to have one on the 19th of August, but the latest news we've got on that is that it's actually already full at this time.
So let me ask you, if you're a South African crew and you've been hired on a boat somewhere, say in Europe or the US, is it possible to get a flight out?
It's tricky, to say the least. It is very tricky, especially you go to Central America or the Caribbean, and the problem you'll find is a lot of the South African crew, they may not have a Schengen, or because of what's happened, their Schengen visa has expired, so that makes it more difficult to come through Europe. We did hear a story. This isn't any, just to clarify, this isn't any of our yacht or any of our clients. But we did hear of something this past week of a crew member who basically their contract had finished on the yacht, and they were in Nassau. Unfortunately, their US visa had been revoked, and they're stuck there at the moment. It's almost virtually impossible to get them anywhere. This poor crew member didn't have a Schengen visa, doesn't have a UK visa, and like I said, the only visa they did have was their US one, which has been revoked. And so they're at this moment in time, we're sort of looking to try and help them, but it's increasingly difficult.
So there's no end in sight, you say. What, with your ears on the ground, what are the words that's being spread out there as far as South Africa and the resumption of normal activity airline-wise?
Yeah, I mean, up to last week, we were still hopeful, and the word was that they were hoping that they were going to have them resuming from September. There are rumblings this week that it could be as late as January. Whether that's scaremongering or not, we don't know. There isn't no official word as yet. This is just rumours that are circulating at the moment. Let's hope it's closer to September than it is to the new year, especially for the South African crew, just to make it easier for them to get to and from their respective places of work. But it's just a matter of waiting and seeing what happens next. It changes on a week-by-week basis, it seems.
Well, I mean, we've just experienced that between Europe and, well, actually Spain and the UK at the moment. I mean, it doesn't affect crew, but they've just out of the blue, implemented a 2-week quarantine for anybody traveling to Spain. So upon return. So you just don't know what's happening. And next week that could change.
It's exactly right, and it's the same with the EU safe list, where they have, they had 14, it's now down to 12. We spoke about this last week, and they took the 2 off. No 2 weeks are the same in travel or the yacht industry when it comes to getting people to and from places. It's increasingly. I say it's increasing. Maybe it's not increasingly difficult compared to what it was back in March, but the goalposts change week by week, and so you've always got to be on your guard to know exactly where people can go to, what they need to get to the place, i.e. a COVID test, PCR test, and how many hours they need that beforehand. United Airlines this week announced that anybody who is not wearing a face mask on their flights or refuses to put one on at check-in, they're now going to ban from any future flights. So these things, everything changes. These new rules are implemented, then they're taken away, then they're put back in place again when COVID spikes in certain areas. So it's just a matter of, you have to be on your guard, you have to research everything, every day, especially for us as a company, every request that we get in, even if it's the same as what we had the day before, we cannot, you can't presume that what you've done yesterday is going to be okay for the same, for this different passenger a day later. Because like we say, things are changing so quickly, so rapidly, you've always got to be on your guard.
Well, there is some good news, though. I mean, airlines are now starting to increase activity. There's more destinations being added. There is also more flights being added in certain areas.
Yeah, especially in Europe as well, which is great news for the summer season, which is now ramping up. Lufthansa this week in a press release announced that they're adding 2 twice-weekly services to Las Palmas in Gran Canaria. These will be operating on Saturdays and Sundays, which will mean more flights in Europe for the summer season for the crew looking to go to work. And further good news for the yacht summer season came this week when KLM announced that its network will continue to grow over the coming months. The number of destinations the airline will offer as from next month is comparable to the same routes that it was operating a year ago, which is unbelievable, really, bearing in mind COVID. They were operating 92 flights this time last year, and by August, so in a week's time, they're going to be operating to 91 European destinations. There is a slight caveat on that, I must admit, that the number of actual flights operating on these routes will have decreased substantially. Obviously, in August 2019, there was 19,000 flights operating to those 92 destinations. Compared to this year, there'll only be the 10,000 flights to 91. So there is going to be more competition to get on the flights. So I would suggest any yachts out there who are now planning crew changes to try and get the flights booked up as early as possible, because there is going to be competition for the flights, and especially to get the best fares as well.
Well, and not only that, once you do get your flight, the fact is, in order not to miss it, you have to make sure that you add on quite a few hours to the process of going. Make sure that you have, every bit of paper in place, or you could be refused.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah. We would suggest that anybody gets a PCR test done at least 72 hours before. Again, we've spoken about this before. It's not, a lot of airlines, it's not mandatory, but how things are going, like we say, with the UK now implementing the 2-week quarantine for anybody out of Spain. One day it could be fine, the next day an airline come around and say, well, actually, yes, from Monday we're going to be expecting people to have a PCR test, or the country that you're traveling to may. So we would suggest that people have that in place. Obviously, all their yacht papers up to date, because obviously the exemptions, they're going to need the yacht crew papers, their discharge book, because without them, they could be classified as a standard traveller, and then quarantine or whatever may affect them.
Do you have a sort of a list that you give to clients that we could perhaps have and publish underneath our interviews? Just sort of a basic outline?
Of what they need to travel with?
Yes.
Yeah, I can certainly get that to you, Ria. I think actually on my LinkedIn as well, I've got an article on there, sort of just basically step-by-step guide of what we would suggest people do, seafarers do at this time with regards to travel. So I can forward that on to you so that we can put that underneath, so they've got that as a quick reference guide.
Yeah, that'd be great, because people do have questions, and in today's day and age, there's just such a worry about traveling, and there's a nervousness that goes with it. in the past, there used to be that excitement. I've got a job, great, I'm going to my yacht, and I'm going to rock up an hour before the flight and I'm off to work, no big deal. But it's become an event all unto its own now. You know, the whole check-in process, making sure that you've got all the paperwork, double checking. You know, it's the same as leaving the house nowadays, to be absolutely honest. You know, before it was your wallet and your car keys, and now it's, you know, a myriad of other things as well. So with flights, it's really important, especially because there are so few flights, and those flights do get booked up so quickly. The likelihood that if you get to the airport and you forget A, your mask, or B, your Siemens book, or whatever else that you may need, how long will it take you to rebook another flight? And will that job still be there for you when you manage to get that next flight?
That's the thing, isn't it? You know, it is, you know, at the moment, the only thing that we can say is for crew to be prepared. That's all we can say is, you know, if you know you've got a job coming up, or you know that your crew change is coming up, make sure, you know, what we'll put underneath, just make sure that you've got all this in place. Make sure you get to the airport nice and early. I know, you know, it used to be recommended that you turn up at least 2 hours before. We recommend it's at least 4 hours now, just to make sure that you, you know, you've got all your paperwork, you followed all the procedures, the airline are happy. Yeah, and then hopefully, and fingers crossed, you're on your way.
Wonderful. Was there anything else that you think we should let crew know this week before I let you go?
It's not necessarily specific to crew, but I think it's worth mentioning because they're the first airline to do it. Emirates Airlines this week, they've become the first airline to cover medical expenses and quarantine costs if the travellers are diagnosed with COVID-19 during their journey. So if they have their PCR test 72 hours before and it's clear, and then if on their arrival at their respective airport that they're going to, if they get a positive test, Emirates are now saying they will cover medical expenses of up to 150,000 euros. And they will also cover quarantine costs of 100 euros per day for 14 days if anybody tests positive on arrival at an airport. And that also, just to clarify as well, that insurance is free to customers who are flying with Emirates.
That's amazing.
Brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Amazing. They're the first airline to do it. Whether any other airlines are brave enough to follow up on that, it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, it's definitely, you know, kudos to Emirates for doing that, for definite.
Well, considering the airline industry straight across the board seems to be taking this opportunity to get rid of staff and lower wages and do everything else they can do to cost cut, for a company to sort of step up and say, you know what, we see the realities, excuse me, of today's day and age, and we're going to take that extra step to ensure that our customers are safe, happy, and healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows the confidence that they've got, that the processes they've got in place to keep people safe from COVID whilst in their care. You know, they must have the utmost confidence in the crew and in the processes of cleaning the airline, the aircraft and the airports to even be able to think about offering this. So, you know, a massive well done to them for putting it in place.
Well, and neither one of us were paid to talk about it either, just to verify that.
No. I mean, if Emirates want to, they can feel free to.
I know, right? Sign up here. Well, Lee, once again, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we're very thrilled to have you here on a weekly basis to let us know what is going on the world over, because it is an ever-changing beast at the moment. So thank you again for your time.
No, thanks ever so much for having me. I love being here, so it's yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Wonderful. Once again, this has been Lee Harris from Blue Marine Travel out of New Zealand. They do offer a worldwide service, so we will provide their details underneath this interview. You've been watching another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. Tune in again for another episode.